right. So we combined two sessions that are basically yammering on about open source for a while here. More contributions, more libraries, especially server libraries.
Basically what ends up happening is you kind of like,
I don't know.
Okay, so introduce myself. So my name is Jens.
so now
I'm
you,
from
some of your data
SAP, and I'm in a team developing core OData libraries for various platforms within SAP. So one is ABAP library we have developed, and this is I would say the secure state regarding the row specification. We see also within SAP that the Java stack, there is also a lot of interest regarding the Java library, and various teams started to download their J library, which is also that code, and did their own modifications on that library, but to fit into their project needs. But at the end of the day, they didn't contribute these.
Go louder.
Sorry.
Could you speak up louder so that
At the end of the day, they
go over Alex.
they didn't they didn't contribute their changes back to that code project. And since we are more or less a central team within SAP caring about these OData libraries, we said we have also to do something here to collect those kind of contributions and bring it back to the open source world. So that's more or less the story behind. I could talk a little bit about our experiences we have made with these open source contributions, but I would be also interested if someone of you also thinks about open source contributions or is still doing such contributions, and what are the experiences there to also have, as we had also in the session yesterday, let's say libraries maybe totally independent from Microsoft implementations with WCF data services and so on. Really prove that we have that we also have a specification outside which can be implemented in other stacks as well. So that's my interest in this session. Maybe I start with just sharing some experiences we had now with this open source contribution. So we started last year, let's say November, to look into this from our team. So first of all, we approached the main contributor of OData for today, that's Charles Berg. And it was pretty easy to get contribution rights to this project, since not that many people are working on the project. And what we now did in the first run are two things, more infrastructure topic things, to also integrate this library into our own platforms within SAP. So one was to enable that library for OSGI support. So that was one requirement we implemented. The second one was that this OData for J library is really coupled with Jersey. And here we did an abstraction, so to say, to also enable CXF, which implements this REST, JAX-RS REST standard, to also have here to fit to our infrastructure needs within SAP. So having completed this, this library from an OData point of view is still in a, let's say, early phase. So what we are doing now is it's still in a 0.6 version right now, and now we are starting to implement a reference scenario on that OData for J library. The same scenario we basically have implemented on top of our ABAP library to really now find out what features are missing in the library, to track the those missing features as issues within this OData for J project, and then yeah, trying to prioritize what are our needs within SAP, what we should implement from such features, but also counting on the other side on the community, so that also the community engages and implements these features we have listed as issues in this slide.
So, just broaden the conversation a little bit and talk about some of the other things that are going on. So, I'm at Microsoft. Microsoft has done a number of implementations other than the .NET one. Several of those are shared source, PHP and Objective-C, and a lot of those that we created or we got a vendor to create for us and then did shared source through our interop group. And then there's also one of those now, the Objective-C one, we've transitioned from shared source to actually open source, where regular contribution models. Most of those remain still fairly Microsoft dominated. We're not getting a lot of pickup from other people contributing to those. The iOS one, I've gotten a couple, 2 or 3 pull requests, which is good, but I'd like more.
Is it due to lack of advertising, or is it due to...
Some of it is due to lack of advertising. Some of it is due to lack of time on my part, not making it a vital thing because I'm spending time doing other things. Some of it is due to, there isn't another big enterprise that's involved with that. And so we're trying to, the development is done by either some Microsoft people or general breadth developers and garage developers that doesn't, home hobbyists, which you can build a community that way. But it's less likely to meet the needs of the 4 enterprise companies that actually want to do something. So I'm looking around the room, we are people who hire programmers to do some of this work, and we're already paying them to do some of this work on some of these platforms. So my desire is more just to organize these sets of people first, and at least get the platforms that we care about, that we are already writing for us to collaborate and share that. And then we can build communities and get those garage developers and other people on board to those as well. But I think our best bet is to, for a lot of those, get core development that's already happening there to just be in a more unified, shared way. I don't know how to accomplish that.
And it sounds like within Microsoft they're getting a fairly wider distribution than outside. For instance, you do have SharePoint running it, you do have other services running it, but that knowledge is just not known.
What if you want to point to something?
So I think that's an issue that you got to overcome also. You've got this protocol, you've got the services, but you don't have knowledge spreading that's there that people want to take up that ability and what it means to them.
Yeah.
Which you could go to on some other side.
I agree. There's not much developer pull because we haven't told all the developers that it exists.
Here, you can use SharePoint this way. Or you can use this way.
I also think one problem is that there are not enough client libraries which are really not only a client library in order which I can use to code, but also, for example, if I look at Kendo UI, which is OData binding, this is extremely poor. There is no write support and looks to me only experimental. But if you have something out there where you can easily, much more productive build your applications, be it mobile or HTML5 or whatever, then I think the attraction of the data libraries and the contribution will then increase dramatically. So,
not really what you want to do, I don't think. There's 20 of the service.
I agree with that. The question is who's going to write those?
Have you posted the need for any of these things, like on your OData.org or any other blog that you say, hey, these are the type of things we could use to help facilitate?
That's a good idea. No, we haven't. We've mentioned occasionally on the mailing list or some of those, hey, it'd be good to have some of these things. But as I'm hearing around the room, there are a lot of people, even in this room, who aren't on the mailing list but do read the blog. So we should probably post more of those that make some sense. And I know that we have links, like from the libraries page on OData, we've got links to existing libraries, but we don't have yet clearly visible. Here's the gap, please fill it.
So I think what you're saying is you could, when you respond to a request, you could.
So is anyone already engaged in such open source contributions?
A formal way
So,
of data.
I'm an infrequent contributor to the OData project. So I've seen the mailing emails go about the 0.6 release. It's quite interesting because when I got onto the project, it was because I wanted to learn Java, and this was one of the ways I did it. Was the writing unit tests for OData project and fixing some bugs in there. It's very easy to lose traction there and then lose focus because I did that for 2 months and then I started working on the PHP client library and then released the server and then I started looking for Ruby stuff. What I want is an opinion about how much of this, even if we start creating open source project, how much Microsoft involvement do you want? Because one of the things that stops me from making more contributions to the OData for the project is, even though I have inside knowledge of where the OData V3 protocol is going, I don't want to change the people running it already have strong opinions about how they want to run it, and that's what we want from open sourcing it. Is not just about getting contributions towards code; it's because we want different ways of thinking also guiding the project.
Yeah.
And I've been able to take some stuff that I did on OData project and apply back and forth. It works that way for us. So I want to understand how much Microsoft involvement do you want in these things? Is it just guidance, or do you want actually code contributions towards these libraries?
Yes, the answer would be yes.
So is it A or B? Then yes.
I think it depends on the level of abstraction which you build on top of those libraries. Like we did the client in the JavaScript for OData, and we provide the basic like serialization, deserialization, and all that stuff. And I think up to that point, people are like, you understand and parse the metadata, you make sense of at that level. On top of that, whether you integrate with HTML5 like local storage in the browser, or you do some special caching and do all that stuff, that is where Microsoft should not go, because there are other projects which are being run. Whether you want to integrate with jQuery UI for the binding, or you want to integrate with Dojo or something else, that's where it becomes tricky in terms of you have to take a bet on a certain technology within that domain. But for the basic stuff, like most of the requests we get is like, yeah, like why should I go and parse all the metadata and make sense? Like if the V3 is coming out, yeah, it better understand the vocabularies and it better understand the JSON-like. Because from the contributor perspective, I don't get much out of that. Like I want that to be just available to me. So, but even at that level, it becomes tricky to go and invest and bring every client to the next protocol.
It's okay so long as
So what I'm going to do is there is basic level that.
describe the thing.
So we want open source contributions towards different architectures that are built out of building blocks, and there needs to be building blocks that are stable that people use. Metadata parsing or Atom and JSON parsing is just a building block, and people building abstractions right on top of it or additional stuff, and that's what we want to see.
And it's not exactly the same as the entity type.
I don't know how to feel about that. Today we have, I think the OData for J is probably the most mature library offering that is there outside of the open source community. You could argue that the PHP 1 and PHP is also at the same level, but I don't have first-hand interaction, so I don't know.
It's a Microsoft project.
It's a Microsoft project.
It still has some significant gaps compared to OData for J.
Yeah.
It's not GP.
It's got a couple of really good killer features, like generate a OData service off of a database, a MySQL database. It's a great killer feature, but it's got some gaps, and it doesn't have.
Even that kind of brings up a weird issue that comes up when you're really trying to put an OData head on a database. The thing Arno's talking about is code that crawls a MySQL database and creates a bunch of classes to provide an OData feed for that database. But there are many CMSs we've found that have data structures that the last thing you'd want to do is expose those particular data structures. The data structure is designed to allow some flexibility on the back end by not really being fully normalized and not really a classic data structure. Like WordPress, for example, when I started looking at WordPress data structure, as a longtime WordPress user, I was very surprised at how the data was structured. So, so there, in that case, we actually, I'm on the Interop team that Arlo mentioned. We actually worked with a vendor to create a little WordPress OData provider that doesn't take advantage of the MySQL OData producer library that we worked with some other guys to create. So there's an example where, at first glance, WordPress is based on MySQL. Oh, here's a MySQL OData library. This must be the thing to use. And actually, that's not what you want to use at all. So that, unfortunately, I think increases the number of such projects that need to exist over time.
Data. So it's like for the whole American map.
But the idea of
they have one country map.
posting what
And
you
then
have
the
done
resolution of the
in these source
So they
files
just-
and what needs to be done
And so
might be a
I
good
want
idea to
be
get
able
somebody to
so
want
the
to be
first
able to
step
help
is
do
if all
it.
data can provide
Like if I knew that you
basic
didn't implement
geospatial
functions,
location kind of vocabulary,
it might be
is that-
something that I might be interested in
Yeah,
doing,
hold
just
on.
on my own
The
thing at
second
home.
step
Just do things like that.
Yeah, so that's often done on each project specific site.
is OData.
Yeah, should there be some central on OData where we say, well, this library supports actions, this library does not support actions, etc. Or should we leave that up to the individual projects?
Good question. I mean, is it distributed or is it centrally managed? Yeah.
And again, putting that up there, is that an endorsement of the quality?
Is it what?
Is it just distribution of that information, or is it an endorsement of what the quality of the thing is? Because
If you say there's this library, but it doesn't support this, this, and this, and it only supports this version, you kind of put a stamp on that library creator already that's like, don't use it because it's kind of not up to date, right? Do you really want to give that message from OData.org?
OpenZen. They do stuff like that all the time. They mention what I can and can't do. Then you get people in here, here's what code to do it. So, and then the people manage it in and work that code in. If you don't state it, then you could be falsifying what you're representing. I'd rather have the truth and be able to update the truth versus be surprised later on that, oh, it doesn't do that? Damn, now I gotta go find something else because I don't have time to, whereas in the beginning I might have had time.
But to think about it, centralizing or not centralizing, it seems like most of these open source projects are posted on some kind of website or repository, Codeplex, whatever, and they have the infrastructure there to do better tracking of issues and documentation and stuff like that. So if you want to centralize that, I don't know if you were going there, but just saying that.
I don't care about centralization or decentralization. To me, if you centralize, manage, and decentralize the code, I mean, it's, or whatever, it's a nightmare. To me, it's however the management wants to deal with the code, or deal with the whole set of projects. You're going to have more than one.
We could, for example, say we give the creators of open source libraries the possibility to post on the OData.org blog if they specifically want contributions, and they make a post and say, if you want to contribute to our library, go there off OData.org. But we give them a place to vocalize that intent on OData.org.
Maybe even a space just to talk about status and what's going on, because I don't think it's very visible right now. Just having that push platform to.
We've been having a lot of conversations internally in the last 2 or 3 weeks of the libraries page on OData.org and how to make that actually be useful. I mean, it provides some value right now, but what that should really be like. So yeah. Right now we're still tossing around a whole bunch of ideas, and so I'm not going to present something and ask for feedback. It's more, I'm listening to everything that people want on that and seeing if is this something that we can solve on the libraries page? Is that something we can solve on the libraries page? But yeah, so if there's types of information that should be on there, or if you have an idea for information presentation, or the way that people should be interacting with it, and who should be updating it, and how easily, and that sort of stuff. I want to hear it.
We're looking specifically at improving the library's experience on the OData.org website. So if you have any feedback about that, saying like, this is something I'm missing there, or this is something which is not clear enough for me, please give that feedback.
Yeah, and one of the things I like about pages is an easy download page. Someplace where I can get the source and binary is pretty easy. Second, synopsis of what's there, maybe pointers to what it does and what it's missing. And then, like the project page, where you can do your updates, or you can actually sign up to be a developer if you want to, where you do the submits and commits, but they don't actually go to the code base until the manager says, okay, let's bring it in, which is a typical way of what open source works. But the ease of getting the first version is usually how easy am I to want to use it.
Yeah. So it's sounding to me like on a couple of things that got mentioned here that I think could or should be addressed on the libraries page. Talking about the libraries, talking to the libraries that we want to exist and don't, so that people can see where those holes are and offer to fill them. Talking about the features that are and are not supported on the libraries in some rolled up fashion, not everything, but this one supports V2 and actions and functions, you know, something like that. And then, other than that, a couple of different deep links into the project's existing stuff. A deep link into their documentation, their downloads, their main project, join the project page, a couple of those sorts of things. Their roadmap. Yeah.
That I usually find in some projects, that there's always easy access to the standard definitions. Because if I go deep into a page and I download something, I might want to also get the standard along with it. Now I have to go find it.
Right. So from that same libraries page, easy way to get to protocol docs and that sort of stuff.
The documents are referred to.
And something else we discussed is we have this, at least that's what I have, my personal feeling is that some libraries on the libraries page are more promoted or more interesting or more used than others. Should we, I don't know, have a visual way of representing what we think is heavily used and what is less used and what is heavily up to date and what is less heavily up to date? Or should we just have everybody keep it a table or whatever, keep it visually similar for every single one, no matter if it's a one that gets frequent contributions or if it's one that's a year old and never got updated?
Yeah, which do we value more?
Do we validate that more, or do we want to communicate that
I like
out?
to see, personally, I like to see, you know, last contribution. When was it performed? And I would say the number of contributions is initially, but it's more like, is this still active? If I see a library that's a year old and has not been, or 2 years old or whatever, has not been contributed to, I'll be less willing to look at it.
Yes, but is that
the
also
little old spark line?
But is that also not a step that you put in place for your level of commitment or how easy you would be willing to contribute to that project is suddenly higher because you think it will be a bigger mess once you start to contribute to it?
This is just one possible design.
It's the description that will make me go further.
If it had no
Of what the library
then it
provides.
implies
And that's what's going to tell me whether I want to
there's nothing in my model that
It's,
describes.
but again, we do
I can
multiple levels
annotate
of
it
filters.
to say, oh, look.
For me, I'm going to first look at the more recent ones. And if I find one in there that fits my need, then if I don't, then I'll move down to the less frequent ones. And then if I'm looking for a library or am I looking for a tool? For instance, I think that page also has like, what's it, link pad?
Yeah.
Right.
It has a few apps.
Yeah, and they're mixed in with libraries.
Yeah.
Which is annoying to me.
Yeah.
It also has, I think the libraries page, the way it is right now, also has sample code and stuff like that. And
That, I love samples.
Yeah.
But
I go to
it's not,
samples
the
all-
sample code is not specifically related to one of the libraries. It's just it's sitting there next to
But I
it.
think well organization of it is much better than a single list,
Yeah.
a single table.
Navigation properties.
We want to show. Sure. Did you have a laptop?
According
Okay.
to our convention or navigation properties.
We have a
It just shows up
Working
in that.
prototype thingy
Yeah.
that we're sort of drafting. We know it could be a lot better, and we would love feedback about how to create it so it's better.
I mean, if it's open to the outside or everywhere, send a link out.
No, you can't access it from outside.
we could open it. We just haven't. Do we have a server that would I don't know if we have a server.
The place that it's
put on.
currently hosted on cannot be open, so we should have to move everything. Actually, be front and square about
Put it on,
this. Oh, you have it?
put it on Azure.
Yeah.
We can probably do it. Right now it's running off of his dev box.
Yeah, it's
so-
on my personal machine in my office, so it's just.
Yeah.
And I use that for other stuff too, which cannot be open sourced.
How would you do it if it didn't have a file?
So let me just
here
go there.
in this model.
Oh, we might not be able to access it from the wireless network. Really? I don't know.
But then again, it's not the best
Oh, it is.
display format
No, but still.
for everyone to want to look at.
Yeah, pass the laptop around. General description is what we changed is.
So we're trying to make it be more like a picture of the ecosystem. And it shows, so it has clusters of clients and servers and sort of by the types of things.
So we have two columns right now that says clients and server libraries. We use all the icons for the actual language because we guess if you go to that page, you already know which language you want to develop in.
So let's see, there's mobile groups, there's Windows Phone, Android, iOS, and then there's the libraries
for client-side stuff, and then there's the libraries for server-side stuff. And then there's some stuff in the middle, which is right now, it's the tool that was talked about this morning, I think, the Data Explorer tool that lets you put in OData feeds, you mash stuff up, and the output is also an OData feed. So it's a mashup tool, so it doesn't really fit in either side, it's in the middle. So that's why we put it there. And the thing is though that if you choose to, for example, I want to know more about the .NET one, you get a pop-up that says, well, .NET has these specific platforms, 3.5, whatever you want to call it, and it gives you the download links and the stuff about it. And for example, if you would click
if you click JavaScript, you'd expect to see
JavaScript.
4 different projects there.
The one for MooTools, the one for jQuery, the one for, and you would see that specific there, right? And you could link specifically to that page.
Well, that's much better than what's out there right now.
Yeah. Well, we aimed to improve, but we don't know. This is not by a designer or anything.
Now
It's
you
just
go
a
get the
model.
metadata from that
Pass it
thing.
around.
But we're still trying to figure out what information will be up there, who would be updating the
Kind of like
information.
spaces, like this.
Presumably there's some way for each project's core maintainer to update the information that we're talking about their project. What should they be? What we should be encouraging everyone to put up there, and all of that sort of stuff.
Well, that's
We are strongly considering putting an OData feed for this stuff and then driving this whole thing off OData.
this whole web page right now, the backend is JSON actually. So everything is generated on the fly with AJAX requests on the backend. Right now it's not an OData feed it's hitting, but you could imagine that we actually expose it as
Yeah,
an
what you could in theory do is not worry about what repository they're using, but give you a URL to say, this gives us an OData set to describe what you've got.
Yeah.
And they can use the libraries that they're building.
That's right. Yeah.
What if the library they're building doesn't work?
USOL.
We can't update it.
Well, we're going to have, for update, we're going to expose a single action. That action, you just post a particular payload to it. Worst case, you should be able to update with curl or Fiddler.
So I have a more personal question. How many of you guys realize that we updated the navigation very recently for OData.org? The top menu and stuff like that. Okay. Did you like that change? Did you think it was better? Did you just say, oh, this is something we changed? Or
Just saw it 5 minutes
Oh,
ago,
okay.
so. But you noticed it, but I noticed it.
So there's a difference.
So we're definitely looking at making that website better and presenting it in a more uniform way.
We'd like to start making every week or two minor improvements to that site, sort of continually improving it and updating it. And any guidance on what should be there.
What are you missing? What are you looking for if you hit OData.org?
That's not buried down in 3 pages.
That you only find in Google. Okay.
Oh, you mean the spec documents?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All versions of it, because they're more important than you think.
Yeah.
They should all be posted.
Yeah.
all the different versions, because sometimes you have to sit there and go, what's the difference between 2 and 3? Why do I have to go between 1 and 2? You know, those types of things. I always hate it when you can't find the older version.
Well, there is, we moved the protocol documentation one from under the developers tab to just being it at the top. So now you can just go to protocol right away, but it's still not the spec, it's not the document, it's still the website, right? So we might just put the document under there, I don't know.
We also observed that there are differences between the HTML
Yes, there are.
spec.
I'm sort of assuming that
For example, EDF
And
type.
what format do you deliver this in? Just the HTML? Or because a lot of times I don't have access to a website like that on a PDF or something of that sort, or just text file, like RFC text file.
Yeah, right now the main spec is in Word, I think, which is an interesting choice for a public format.
You guys ended up on
Is it DOC or DOC?
Oh, it's a PDF there. You're right, it is a PDF there. Yeah, so it is. So yeah, so it works.
It's also easy to fix.
Yeah, it's easy to fix. It's one of those of there are a number of things on the site that are just a little annoying and easy to fix, but aren't fixed.
And some of the stuff we find obvious, like, oh, we need to fix this, but some of the stuff is like, oh, people are very vocal about it and they want to change it. We don't have any opinion about why not to change it, right?
So that in the result, they're not just a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we should probably put that PDF easier link to
Just put it on the top of the
I put the different versions of them too. You have the
version 1 and 2.
and 3, all 3 of them.
Well, 3 is not. We can't do that.
3 proposed.
Yeah, 3 proposed.
Yeah, we proposed.
If you want people to develop to 3, then you're going to want to get it out there as soon as you can.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if it's in a proposed
say,
format.
Right.
That's where I was
You
going
know
to
it's going to be changed.
expand.
People allow
We
to
may
come
want
on
to
site.
leave navigation properties for cases where what you're pointing at really is an entity.
But then the question is also, for T, for example, or whatever comes after that, how do you want to take contributions to that? Because if you submit, like, for the final version, if you do, it's a PDF, right? And you put that up there, and that's the thing you need to reference if you're developing something. But what if you want to, currently we're using the mailing list sometimes if we,
not just as a link.
For feedback.
for feedback on the spec and stuff like that. Do we want to keep doing it that way? Is that
Well, that's
a
up to
way
you
that
guys. I mean, you can set up a blog for it, or you can set up a feedback mechanism for email, or you can even if you use like Word, if you're still using Word in this process, you've got the feedback mechanism in Word itself.
Yeah.
Where you turn on tracking, you can sit there and go, these are all my comments, and you send back the document.
So there's a couple of things that I need to keep track of when we're doing this. So we don't actually much care how the information comes into us. And we're happy with, if it's a GitHub repository and people are sending us pull requests, great. If it's a Word doc and they're mailing us updated with change tracking, great. If it's comments on the mailing list, just off the cuff an email, wonderful. But there are a couple of criteria that we care about. One, it has to be in some form that people will actually use. So you care more, the medium is more important to the sender of the information than the receiver. So we need to choose the right ones that the senders want. And the other is IP can get very sticky with contributions, so we need to make sure that whatever medium we use is covered in some way so that your contributions, patent rights and copyright rights and the like are shared in a globally usable form, and we don't end up with a portion of the protocol that can't be implemented due to an IP concern. Right?
And then what I would do is publish it under like the GPL. Or
currently, we're doing
MIT,
or
the Microsoft one.
so the open spec promise for all the previous stuff. The work that we're doing towards the new human readable spec, we're asking people to do the Open Web Foundation contributor license agreement, which does just a worldwide patent grant to anyone and who all.
Yeah, the latest one.
Yeah, the latest one does.
But what you said doesn't make sense to me. What would you expect? I mean, each one of us as the contributor won't be able to show up with our own legal framework into your infrastructure. I mean, this is something that you as the Microsoft that facilitate this whole thing should show up with a framework, and we should either accept it or not.
Exactly. So I'm saying that you as the senders control the medium. I want to give you the right medium to communicate. the legal framework, we're going to go ahead and pick one. And
No, okay, so that,
Yeah,
that makes
yeah,
sense. I thought that
yeah.
you tried to kind of
yeah.
turn it back to us and show each one of us to show up with our own
Oh, that
ULO,
would be hell.
and
No,
that's
that
going
would
to
be
be a
hell.
nightmare. So.
Yeah, that would be a nightmare. But we do need anyone who's going to make a contribution to sign such an agreement
Are you going
to
to
cover
offer
the
digital
contribution.
signature?
I wish. I've talked to lawyers on that one.
You have to turn up in person.
Huh?
You have to turn up in person.
By the way, if you haven't signed your NDA for this, I really encourage you to.
Yeah. But yeah, if you want to be a contributor and can sign legal agreements while you're here, that's convenient, and I can print some out. And otherwise, then yeah, we usually.
I'm
do
pretty
it
sure
by
that
mail.
Citrix already has a full set of rules with Microsoft already. It's just a matter of.
Well, it's not your company which is a contributor sometimes, right? Sometimes
No,
it's you
I would be doing
personally
it
on the
as the
side.
company.
Right, he'd be doing it as the company.
Oh, yeah.
But so there's a couple of different contribution things going on here. Stuff that he did on the mailing list. Anyone who signs up for the mailing list signs an agreement that allows us to incorporate that into an OSP release. And so basically, you sign over a set of rights accrue to Microsoft that Microsoft re-releases. And I'm not going to go into the details on that set of rights because off the top of my head I'll get them wrong. But it's a set of rights that allow us to re-release it. For the OWF one and the new stuff that we're doing, instead of you signing over some set of rights to Microsoft, you grant them to the world. Which is what we do with those rights after, when we re-grant them under OSP. So that's what we'd be doing for any of these contributions, is you'd sign such a thing and grant those rights to the world to use for the protocol.
Yeah, so I think we captured that in this.
Open source, yeah, we've wandered afield.
Yeah. Well, one of the initial questions, which was when we started the topic, was we want more server libraries and more contribution to server libraries. So my question is, we might have a few on this. Which server libraries are we missing, or do you feel like there's a big push towards that we should invest in?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Or
The target is OData.
So what is currently available is OData for trade, what else?
Yes, but PHP is not done. PHP is only read-only currently.
yes.
Now, you
Also,
did want to
function
allow
reports, as far as I know, are they in the meantime in the PHP server library, there is a support for function reports.
Not currently. I'm curious if the right functionality were prioritized, if that were done quickly. Is that something you're interested in using?
Not in using, but we are interested in having it to compare.
So that's where
We have some other reference implementations and see how they behave to get these things interoperability.
You kind of know, and if
For example, our server library or our client libraries can use also PHP and also WCF and also our ABAP implementations.
The fleshing out the functionality of the PHP library is definitely something we're looking at doing. It's just resources and priorities, and is anybody actually going to use this if we do it? Those are the sorts of discussions we've had. So this is feedback at least I can bring back that you're interested.
We've got a early drop of the PHP server library, and this was very helpful for us to can look at the code and to have similarities to our use case. Because you always, if you are in a different environment, you can do a straightforward port. Yeah? So you can take a certain implementation and do a straightforward port into a different language, but then the implementation is not very optimal, I think. Yeah. And many things they are not possible. For example, annotations or things like this are in our environment impossible. For example, if you look at data for J, there is the routing of the UI is done via these annotations. JAX-S, there's annotations. And this is not possible. So therefore, the PHP library, which does explicitly this routing iteration over the segments, so this is always something which which I think helps if you do an implementation on a different platform.
One being
to see how this problem somebody else has solved.
It truly is open in that it may appear on an
Let me see what I can do on that. I'm not able to get that done.
that's suitable, but it had no way to advertise
Open
it.
source or server libraries help you.
Okay, that was one scenario.
The .NET.
I think
The .NET one.
Yeah, the .NET
instance
one.
where you
Open source
use
server
the
library.
property mechanism.
You could achieve some level of code portability by just copying the C# code. Java. Modular something.
Modular syntax.
So what's available?
Which libraries are you?
Spring disappears.
Open properties.
Yeah, over time we're moving more and more from
navigation
WCF data services into things like OData Lib. You know, OData Lib is shared source, and at this point, the serialization in WCF data services is OData Lib. We cut out all the rest of it, and we just use OData Lib. So more stuff will be going that way, and the question is there, you know, is this a useful direction, and what in this direction is useful, and prioritize perhaps which parts we open up early. You know, it takes effort to do each piece, right? So, what are the pieces that are going to deliver the value?
The second
Cobalt. You know, that's the second time I've heard that in this month. The other time he was serious.
Well, there's a COBOL out
So
there.
the second is, we may use up the rest of the time on it.
Okay.
The second is the case where
we never made the server
the
sure.
service didn't know.
The client has come out the server.
We did the client for Mono.
Somebody else
So
thought
that Mono could compile it and
Yeah,
use
so you
time
can-
level.
all the requirements.
You can look at the client also.
And then we could describe the fact.
Is anyone writing a C++?
For instance, through a vocabulary. And in fact,
I don't know.
service you
may be.
go ask over here to see what if anything may.
Is that a place
Popular
where
language there.
it is? I've heard it. It runs in a lot of
So in
places.
that scenario, the client can find out.
Is there something like this that a couple of people would be interested in or could collaborate on?
And then the
C++
third case is
server, are you
just
writing one? Are you also writing one?
Actually, we're interested in the C++.
Do you want a C++ one? Okay.
Definitely.
Is there another, you know, are there languages or platforms that a couple of people are targeting that even just, you know?
I think what is also something is JavaScript server library. Maybe not the core part, but from an application point of view, that you write your application server logic in JavaScript.
Node.js. Data.js.
Well, or you could run it on Node if you wanted.
Yeah, there is the IIS node when it compiles. It has a Node.js. You can run Node.js on IIS in Azure. That's very interesting. I haven't actually heard about anyone who wants to write a JavaScript server for a day.
Not server, but you have a
Extensibility.
exactly that you have your callbacks, so where you can put your application logic in different languages. I think the core should, how the core is implemented, the application developer is not interested if it's C++, or whatever.
So it's like a scriptable server where you can write
It's more or less.
Where your data now becomes interesting as there's more data.
That would be an interesting
The
project.
second is.
The question is, from my point of view, why necessarily everything has to be written in the code of the corresponding platform? Why don't have one unique implementation and have language bindings?
Okay. And this is probably more important.
But I don't know how easy or not easy this would be, or efficient or not efficient. But if you support 3 languages, then you always have to maybe different releases. Yeah, then you have the whole matrix of this behaves in this way and this version then differently behaves, and you have to do each and every fix in thousands of places. But
I think that makes a lot of sense. And my impression is the reason it doesn't exist yet is because no one's created it. There's no better reason than that.
one of the reasons that the C++ library interests me is because just this reason. You write the source once and you believe it. And then modulo some compiler issues with you don't just go recompile it in the platform.
It really does run everywhere.
And you should be able to run.
So there's actually majority of
But I don't even know how many people are out there who are building server libraries in C++ for such a high level programming paradigm like the OData server library. You've written that in C#, it's massively complicated as a
definitely doesn't mean that I think you shouldn't have it.
It would be cool to see someone
What
like
it means is that I think you should be at a point kind of almost any data and then look at it through a
Who would be
lens.
interested in contributing to a C++ server library or a feature?
Maybe someone puts
You would?
like a connector in place.
Anyone else around the room?
Yes.
Okay. Is there one that y'all would be interested in contributing to?
We've written a Java server. We started it around 18 months ago, whatever. OData for Jade didn't really do it. So we started ourselves. And we sort of split it off into its own little source area. Trying to figure out what to do with it. I don't know if we can contribute it back to OData for Jade. I'm not really sure what the code is. We're using it ourselves, but I don't know how to share it.
So we try to
You could publish it as a fork of the original source.
What's that?
You could still publish it as a fork of the original source. You can do that.
We didn't do anything with data for
It's Scratch.
So if you talk about
It's
the
on Scratch.
URL, the body of the
It's,
URL,
could still be put out there as an alternative on Java. And
It's like an
it might pull
implementation of
some-
Java.
instead referring to the driven, so that the server gives you URLs.
Internally at SAP.
Those URLs further define So, but I'll also say with JSON Lite and our templates, we're providing a way to
Well, I've got one out came out of the conversation, so I'm about to eat. Anyone can take it wherever you want to go.
Is there anything we didn't touch on that you thought we would have spoken about in this session?
the dollar sign is
So,
very optional.
not based on what's stated as the topic, but the conversation did take a turn into community contributions to the website.
Yeah, so it's
and I
like
think
you
that might
consult-
dovetail also with the idea of community contributions or community involvement with future versions in terms of
There's two parts
feature
to it.
selection.
There's the actual format, which takes advantage
And I was just wondering if
templates which describe
you guys have any plan or desire to make that more open and
they're like
adopt
their vocabulary and their annotations.
some sort of process around that, similar to what maybe what IEstruct does or W3.
Yeah. So
For the purpose of any client that needs
there's some thinking around that. So first of all, currently feature selection is highly driven, interactive with the community. There are places you can go vote up a feature and whatever, but it shows its .NET roots.
Yes.
Which is the way you vote for a feature in OData as a whole is you vote for it in the .NET platform.
That's a user voice. That's a user voice website for WCF data services next version. Where you can vote on features.
So I had no idea. So let me just interject one more thing.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about like what channel people use to get feedback. I suggest that there be one channel. Right now, there's at least a mailing list and a blog, and then there's Stack Overflow. Right?
MSDN for
Yeah, different various.
Yeah.
MSDN.
Yeah.
There's comments on blog posts for the team. There's a blog for the org.
There's also like Connect.
There's Connect with Microsoft.com.
Connect with Microsoft. There are two different blogs. Yeah. There's.
We could add one more.
Yeah, we could add one. Part of we've got a problem that's mostly just a legacy communication issue where it started as a .NET library, and then it went off to be a protocol and wider than that. And there hasn't been enough disentanglement and creation of a strong identity for the .NET library, like you would expect of a typical open source project, because it's never an open source project. It doesn't have a community site. So I think we need to get a core identity there and have some of the things you expect in the .NET library, and then also do that much more strongly with OData.org for this community. So I hear what you're saying, and
and it's composition.
Well, you are not factually true that these things are missing. You're effectively true. You're mythologically
They can't
true.
be found if
If they
they're
can't be
missing.
found, they're missing. There are people who are voting on those, and we do pay attention to those, but it's only a subset of the people who find them. So, yeah.
You could navigate from one.
If you go to the, just so you find it if you search for it later on, if you go to the team blog, the WCF Data Services team blog, on the right-hand side, there's a whole bunch of links of where you can find that information, where we submit bugs, where you that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
but you also got to make that association with WCF equivalent to OData.
Right.
Yeah,
Which a lot of people don't.
yeah. It's, we need a stronger separation between those two, and then each of those to stand alone and be well branded and communicated as their own thing.
And there shouldn't be any feature suggestions in WCF Data Services. At least they should happen in the protocol level, right? And then there might be suggestions on what we implement of the protocol, and that's maybe something else, but it should be completely separate, right?
When you construct a link with process boundary,
And we recognize we need to do something
they would
better.
be covered by the templates as well. So, as much as possible.
So when you guys be putting things
Crossing the net with
going from one OData service to another OData service, from one OData service to someone
Yes.
It's all possible.
So there are a few things that are in the V3 protocol that we haven't implemented.
Functions, for example, like Alex said yesterday.
Yeah. Generally, when we're implementing, when we're putting something in the spec, we want to prove that it is implementable. So we usually add it to our implementation. When we don't add it to our implementation, we implement an internal mock-up to at least, at least get a rough idea.
We actually used to have a rule that said we wouldn't put anything in the protocol that we couldn't implement.
Yeah.
Because we didn't think we were smart enough to design
To
the
get it right.
protocol in isolation.
Right.
We broke that a little bit in 3.0, and I think going forward we're going to have a more stringent rule where we'll go back to that, but also we're not going to ship anything that doesn't go through the whole community process and that we fully implement and make sure we understand all the issues. We always find probably 10 plus issues when we try to implement the features with the protocol. So we either just don't know how to do protocols that well, or it's hard.
Are you going to publish it for you as a rough draft anytime soon?
Yeah. End of this month, there will be a preliminary protocol draft as well as the next .NET release.
Next release is going to be well, we're going to beat you by 2 weeks.
Yeah.